Well, good morning from Racing Back. We've had Dennis Noyes on from California. We've had Jerry Burgess from Australia. We've got Dr. Martin Rains from Yorkshire, and he's got us up earlier, I tell you, than any of those people across the world. Wow, those Yorkshire people certainly get up early. But up we are, Speedway tonight. So I'm glad I'm up. Oxford Cheetahs versus Poole Pirates. Looking forward to that. But yeah, it's a special Racing Back today. It's the Racing Back, our very own Hall of Fame for the forgotten smaller classes and riders who rode those quite incredible machines. We're not old curmudgeons. Well, perhaps we are, but we don't think we are. And we really understand new ideas and strategy to take MotoGP forward. But it's vital. It's absolutely vital not to forget those history and those smaller classes and embrace them as well, because they really did form the very backbone of the World Championship. And you can't erase or ignore history, but perhaps you can learn from it. That's my theme today. I'm delighted to welcome Dr. Martin Rains, Rainsy, to us all, even though it's 9:30 in the morning. Jules, good to see you.
And you,
right, 1949 Grand Prix racing started, Rainsy, and the smaller classes were already there.
That's right. I think we need to remind ourselves that the smaller classes were so important in those early days. 1949, we had four classes: the 125cc class, 250cc class, 350 and 500. And of course, a lot of people now have never seen the 350cc Grand Prix. They have disappeared quite a long time ago. But those were the four important classes. And it wasn't as much like today, where the Premier class, 500cc class took the priority. I think they were all genuine Grand Prix, and the World Championships were important in every one of them. Don't you agree that that was the case in the early days?
I would, and you can point to an era of the early years, certainly of MV domination, of Aggo and that, when all of the technical development and interest was in the lunacy going on in the 250 class of V4 water-cooled two-strokes and God knows what else. And then there was talk, serious political talk of canning the 500s.
Yeah.
I look at the World Championship now, MotoGP, and you look Aprilia, Ducati, Honda, and they all cut their teeth and they all made their mark in the smaller classes before they came in to the bigger classes, didn't they?
Yes.
I think that's the case, and a lot of the riders do now. But I think in the past there was genuine there were riders who were specialists, 125, 250cc, even 50cc and 80cc riders that stayed. There were career riders in those classes, but rather than it being a stepping stone to the.
Yes, the word there, Martin, is career.
Yes,
because unless you had a factory contract, like an Angel Nieto or Luigi Taveri, who fit your definition just now, you had to go and ride the bigger classes to make any money. And people like, in latter days, Bruno Knoibüller, who rode every damn class to make any wedge. If he couldn't get an 80cc Krauser factory contract, he had to ride a private 500 to pay the rent.
That is very true. But there was in the early days, I think it's in the 50s, the Italians dominated those smaller classes, the Italian manufacturers like MV, Mondial, Marini. And there were quite a lot of sort of factory or semi-factory type bikes about in the 125s, 250cc classes. And if you look at the list of riders there, and for me, when I first started following the sport, Carlo Ubbiali was one of the true legends. 38 Grand Prix wins, 9 world titles. He was a true legend.
All with MV?
I think all with MV, or did he have some in the early days with Mondial or Marini? I'm not quite sure about, but mainly MV. He was a MV.
He was second. He was like Aggo did the 500 and 350, and Ubiali did the 250, 125. And he did it in the same manner.
He did, and the competition in those classes was absolutely tremendous. As I said, it was the Italian manufacturers that dominated, except for the few years with NSU also came in. So if you look down the list, there's quite a selection of machinery. Of course, the 500cc class in those days were also well competed by Gilera and Norton in the early days, AGS and so on. But the 125cc and 250cc.
I mean, Carlo Ubiali is a name that is not revered in the way it should be, certainly outside of Italy. And I think he's the obvious name, in the Hall of Fame, as you say, Nick, you were talking about. He is, in my view, along with Luigi Taveri.
Yes. And the other one for me is Provini. Tarquinio Provini.
Absolutely.
You've mentioned that I've got my book behind me, and I have got the book, the great book here. It's written by.
We have the two authors trying to sell their remaining copies here.
We have our book here. A great book written by Julian and some other bloke. That we've got there. And I sort of contributed some things, but Julian did the fantastic picture captions. And there is a tremendous, one of my favourite photographs of motorcycle racing is in 1956 showing a picture of a very intense looking Tarquinio Provini on the grid. I don't know whether you remember this, Julian. And he looks intense. He looks hard. Very much in contrast to the picture above, where there's John Surtees. He's very, very smooth, refined looking, and the caption is one of my all-time favourite captions. Do you remember it, Julian? You probably remember writing this. Tarquinio Provini. There may have been tougher racers, but no one is quite sure who they might be. And I think that sums it up. It's tremendous. When I read that caption, Julia, I thought absolutely tremendous. And it wasn't just him. I would think you could say the same about Ubiali. They were tough characters, weren't they?
And those two didn't like each other, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. But Ubiali, I suppose to some extent, we perhaps remember these days, because when I first started going in the paddock in the mid-90s, Ubiali was still around, and you could talk to him, and he was a nice guy and so on. So it kept alive those memories. We spoke to Ubiali raced in 1949, so you could actually go and speak to somebody who'd raced in those very early days. Cecil Sanford, who occasionally turned up at Grand Prix and so on. You could talk to them, so that helped to keep it alive. Maybe now that it is so remote that there's nobody around.
Yes, it's a bit like looking for a D-Day veteran nowadays. If you're around, you're 100 years old.
Yeah,
it's difficult. Back to Provini, of course. He was Marini, was his factory. And
was it a single cylinder? Was it a single cylinder machine that used to write that against the multi-cylinder ones? I can remember. Must be younger than you two. Then no, I really remember following him because he was the man against the more exotic machinery, wasn't he, on this single cylinder machine?
And there was the Mondial. There was all sorts of the Italian, as you were saying, Martin. There was an array of Italian manufacturers. NSU got their clog in there in the certainly the early 50s. The AJS 7R kept racing for how long? There was all sorts of stuff. And then the Japanese.
Yes. And again, it was Honda started in the Isle of Man in the 125cc class. I think they won the team award, didn't they, when they arrived on the island? A lot of people, I would say, sniggered, but turned their noses up a little bit at their machinery. Little did they know, or we know, or anybody know what was going to arrive. 5-cylinder 125s, twin-cylinder 50s, 6-cylinder 350s. Oh, my God.
And those original 125s were based on thinking Mr. Honda Drive from observing the NSU factory
Yes.
in a European visit.
He came, didn't he? He came to the island 2 years before.
Yes.
And was, by all accounts, astounded at the pace and the mechanical side of the NSUs and those machines, and went back with lots of spare parts, I believe, in his hand luggage.
Yes, carburetors.
Worked on.
But in the early 50s, amazingly, the German industry was the biggest in the world for a short period of time. As the country rebuilt.
That was 1959, wasn't it, when they very first arrived? That's
right. They rode in the 125. Did they? Yeah. I think they won the team prize, didn't they? Which
they did, because
was a remarkable achievement.
Yeah. And they were their four-stroke, so they took over to some extent from the Italian machinery. But as you say, Dick, I think it was even 1963, I think it was when Jim Redman on the Honda and Pravini were battling for the title. So I think that was the last sort of show by the single-cylinder Italian machinery. And Honda led the charge, followed closely by Yamaha and Suzuki, really. But Yamaha and Suzuki, of course, were the two-strokes rather than the four-strokes. So that's when the two-strokes.
Talking of two-strokes, we shouldn't forget that period of time. MZ,
of course,
was nibbling around the edges of everybody.
Yeah. They certainly were, and the MZ had a selection of riders right from. I think Mike Aylward rode for MZ. Peter Williams, I think, won on the MZ. So
he won in Ulster.
Did Jim Redmond win on an MZ? Did he?
I'm not.
I think so.
No, I think his wins were all on Honda. I think he rode them early days.
He did ride, didn't he? Yeah.
But then his wins were on the Honda.
Gary Hockings was recruited from MZ to MV. Ernst Degner, of course, John Hempelman, Bob Anderson. I'm just looking down a few MZ riders from 1960, 1961. Alan Shepard was a
Alan Shepard,
semi-privateer, figured largely, but Ernst Degner was the lead man.
Yes,
he was.
And of course, then we get into the spy who came in from the cold, don't we? That era of black and white. Misty, Checkpoint Charlie, early mornings in East Berlin.
Yeah, that's
should we have another book? Of course, a great book, Stealing Speed.
Exactly.
Very much by Matt
We should recommend books to people, perhaps.
That was fabulous.
That's a great book, Stealing Speed by Matt
his defection after the Swedish Grand Prix, after he'd learned his family had got over through the Berlin Wall and got into
drugged in the boot of a car.
That's right. He defected, and I believe he took quite a lot of MZ plans and material with him, didn't he? And it led Suzuki into winning world titles, didn't it?
Because Ernst Degner fetched up in Japan, and lo and behold, Suzuki, having been rather embarrassing backmarkers, were all of a sudden contenders.
So he won the fish. I think we should mention at this stage one of the other lower classes that get forgotten about, and that's the 50cc class.
Very much so, yeah.
Which wasn't around for long.
It wasn't around for long. It started in 1962, and Ernst Degner, I think, was the first champion, wasn't he, in 1962? So that was around from 1962 to 1983. The 50cc championship, and then from 84 to 87, that was replaced by the 80cc championships. So they were, again, to some extent, for specialised riders. There was people like Ernst Degner, Ralph Bryans, and such like who would race those machines.
Hugh Anderson.
Absolutely. And they were technological marvels in a way. They had 13-speed gearboxes and so on. So they were very specialist machines. I think if you tried to put one of the 500cc riders on one of those specialist machines, they would find it very difficult.
Yes.
Only one man did it, didn't he? One man did do it.
One man did do it, and we all know that is Barry Sheen.
We've discussed
But
that
later
before,
in the life of the class, when regulations had simplified things a bit.
I think they simplified them down to 6-speed gearboxes rather than the very exotic machinery that the Japanese were using in the 60s.
One clutch lever that took you down 3 gears at a time, and one that, it was all. Tommy Robb telling me he got confused at Assen one year. And he thought he was on the 125, not the 50 or something. Did something completely wrong, locked up the back wheel, skittled everybody. He said, I was in the grass, Degner was in the grass. He said, oh, I was popular.
I first went to the island in 65 for a day trip, and it was 50cc and 500s, and I was at Cregnabar for the 50s. I reckon they changed down 8 or 9 times coming down towards Cregnabar. It was absolutely staggering. Yeah.
We should. I love the old machinery, but we're talking Hall of Fame here. We should
absolutely
get on talking about riders.
Riders, yeah.
I mean, we've gone through, a few there.
Yeah.
The Werner Hasses, the Luigi Taveris, the Italians. And edging towards sort of the more modern era. And
maybe the 60s. Maybe Jim Redmond we mentioned.
Yes,
because he never won 500, did he?
He never. He did go to the 500s, didn't he? When Honda first started in 66 and won the first 2 races, but then he had a accident at the Belgium Grand Prix and retired from the sport. Of course, Jim Redmond is still around. I think he's 94. And I think he's the oldest surviving world champion. So he goes back to the early 60s. But how could you ever think of having a Hall of Fame without Jim Redmond?
Absolutely. Honda's team captain, effectively, in the early years. And a man you still wouldn't trifle with.
No, absolutely. And they would ride 3 Grand Prix in one day, wouldn't they? And Howard and Redmond, I think, won. Well, Howard twice, I think Redmond once won 3 races in a day at Assen. I mean, that's absolutely staggering.
Unbelievable. Yeah.
And not in the Hall of Fame. No,
exactly. And then when this sort of argument came up, with the thinking that the new owners were thinking of not, how shall we put it, not counting, not talking about small capacity or historic world titles.
Marginalising them, I think, is probably a polite word.
The finest comment came from Fonzie Nieto, who emerged from some red carpet, onto some red carpet somewhere, adjusted his dicky bow and said, oh, so my uncle never won a world title? And turned around and went back into the cocktail reception,
13 world titles.
Get that one past the Spanish public.
And so the 60s, I think the people were like the as you mentioned, the Tommy Robbs, there's the Ralph Bryans, there's Jim Redmond, and then Bill Ivey, who I thought was a tremendous rider. One of my very early favourites. 21 Grand Prix wins and only 1 world title. Perhaps should have had more.
We won't mention the 250 world title.
Perhaps we'll just mention it because can we just say that in 1967 or 68 or whenever it was, 68 was it? The focus of the sport was on that battle between those 2 riders.
Yes, Phil Reed and Bill Ivey on the 4-cylinder Yamaha.
Yes, we're taking everything away from the 500cc class, like Aggo winning by 2 laps every weekend.
Yeah.
So the real focus of the sport and what kept it alive was that fierce rivalry in the 125 and 250cc classes.
Just to quote from a well-known book, Mark.
Oh, yeah. I would do,
Aggo won the 500 a gross of 80 points. against Jack Finley in second place, a gross of 36 points.
Yeah.
In the 250s, Reed and Ivy tied on 46 net and 52 gross.
Yeah.
Because you didn't count every result then.
Yeah.
And in the 125s, it was 40 to 34, Reed and Ivy.
Yeah.
Now, that was where the action was, no question. It's where the technological development was. The machinery was cutting edge, to put it mildly. And to put it another way, bloody dangerous most of the time.
Yeah, and I imagine, I don't know, but I would have thought that they would be the highly paid guys as well, because they were risking, they were on the ragged edge.
And they were on. The factory was spending money on developing V4 two-strokes, or square four in the case of Suzuki.
Yeah.
And you're not going to put the test rider on it, or some bloke you whistle up from the back of the paddock. You put the highly paid multiple world champions on it, Phil Reed, Bill Ivy, because this is the class that matters. This is the technology that matters.
Yeah.
And you want to win.
Yeah.
This is, we're going back to my somewhat miserable point earlier about the idea of a small class specialist is a little erroneous.
Yeah.
It is the small class specialists were staying there because they were paid very good money. I always remember the confusion of the American and Australian 500 riders in the 70s and 80s when they looked at the size of Aspar's motorhome.
The technical development surely related to an awful lot what we see now, even now in the MotoGP class, certainly in the old 500 class, and when it switched to four strokes.
Yes, it was that sort of pace of development. It was radical ideas. Coming out every year, and very, very, very skilled top end riders having to cope with sometimes very, very strange ideas.
So I think if we're talking all the famous, perhaps we need to do we get, but Hugh Anderson is somebody else who we need to mention there. And again, there's a great book. I don't know whether I can put my hand on it directly.
The Kiwi who rode Suzuki to multiple world titles.
He got 4 world titles, and he's published a book. It's a great book, and he was ahead in his thinking. He was very much for the marginal gains. He was a really dedicated guy, thinking about the sport, thinking about how he can get the best out of the bike, how he can get the best out of himself, eat healthily, be fit. Where perhaps in those days there was some more hooligan element of, of riders.
Hedonistic.
And mercenary as well.
Yes. I mean, that's marginal gains. That's like listening to Gigi Dall'Igna talk, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And I don't know whether you've read the book, you Anderson. He's all about that, about thinking about how he can get the best out of himself in the motorcycle. Another book, really, if you want to get a feeling of what it was like, what the sport was like in the 60s.
Yes.
When I started as a journalist, when I first got to Grand Prix, we had 50s, 125s, 250s, 350s, 500 and sidecars. You had 6 World Championship events. And before the fax came along and everything else, you had to type out all the results. I tell you. But I mean, it was a pretty full program of events, wasn't it? Yeah. And 350, I think, is the real forgotten class. But 350 brought 2 people, and I would say have got to be close to the Hall of Fame. Number 1 for me would be John Eckrell. You talk about Provini being the toughest. I never saw Provini ride. I saw John Eckrell ride. I have never seen a harder man race a motorcycle.
You make a very good point.
And the other one would be Johnny Cecotto, of course, who in the 350cc class, and in fact went on to win a very good car racer. But Eckerl won that 350cc championship, 81, I think it was it? Or 1980, I think it was.
80, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, it was truly amazing what he did.
You mentioned Eckerl, you have to mention Anton Mang in the same conversation.
Well, yeah, you do, yeah. Oh, yeah, you're coming on to Anton Mang and Court Ballington. But Eckerl, it came down to the final round at the Nürburgring. It was, I think, the final time they raced on the old Nürburgring. And just amazing, the battle between him and Tony Mang. And I think Eckerl would have qualified on the front row of the grid in the 500cc class after qualifying. And I forget where he'd have finished in the 500cc race. It was a race he was not going to lose at all costs. And he won that title. Yeah.
Nicholas, I'm going to warn you now. You have 9 minutes left.
Oh, well.
Oh, my golly, yeah.
This is a subject that we're going to have to come back to again.
Yeah, we are, yeah.
Yeah, Nick, we talked about this a couple of days ago about John Eckerl, and I did have a look, and his fastest lap in the race would have got him set in second place on the 500cc grid.
Yeah.
And that was in front of Kenny Roberts, he would have got.
I think won the world title there, didn't he?
Yeah.
He did, yeah, he did, yeah.
It was, and they were very simple, but by then, let's just say that the rules had changed.
Yeah.
So the exotic machinery of the 60s was left behind somewhat to reduce costs. And by then, the 250s and 350cc machines were simple twin cylinder, 2 strokes, very often piston ported. So John Eckerl won the championship on that and lapped the Nürburgring faster than Kenny Roberts had done in qualifying. So,
wow.
Well, yeah, I agree with you there, Nick. What a tough rider he was, yes.
Yeah. Completely.
Again, there's a tremendous book that he wrote.
The Privateer.
The Privateer.
That's right, yeah.
Here we are. Fantastic book, The Privateer. Again, really tells a story of what it was like to be a privateer and during the 70s. And how he had to be tough, really, to survive, because if he didn't go to the next race, he'd run out of money.
Yeah, that book benefits from being self-published, effectively,
Yes.
In that it has never seen a lawyer. There is stuff in there that wouldn't have got into mainstream.
Yeah.
That's a recommendation, by the way, not a criticism.
Absolutely, yeah. I was fortunate enough to meet him. He I think he brought some of the books to the
Stafford Classic White Show.
Yeah, and I have a signed copy of that, and I'm a really nice guy to talk to. I can't say I agree with everything he said, because I was a Barry Sheen fan, so you would imagine I wouldn't agree with everything John Eckerl said, but certainly an interesting man.
Oh my God! I'll tell one very quick John Eckerl story. It was the penultimate round, Czech Republic, first time I'd ever been to Brno. His 2 mechanics weren't allowed to come because they had South African passports. I think John was only allowed in because his father had a Norwegian passport. That's the sort of thing you had to go. Anyway, the race he was leading, or he was second behind Tony Mang. It was going to make the World Championship virtually his. Had problems. I think he finished 9th or 10th. End of the race, came into the pits. New Grand Prix reporter, bright motorcycle news jacket, rushed up to Motorcycle Weekly, jacket, rushed up to him. What was the problem? The language after that was taught me a lesson. Nürburgring 2 weeks later or a week later for the final round of the championship, was a bit nervous. Standing at the gate of the paddock was John Eckerl. Signalled me over. I thought, this is it. He said, I'm really sorry. I was out of order. I shouldn't have spoken to you like that. What a gentleman.
Yeah. And the first time I met him, he was with Martin Wimmer.
Ah, yeah.
Universally, I thought, oh well, if you judge a man by his friends, then let's give him a thumbs up.
Yeah. And Martin Wimmer, that you mentioned there, who I remember when the Grand Prix first came over to the mainland, went to Silverstone in '77. as a fan, I was looking forward to seeing the stars in the 125, 250, 350cc class just as much as in the 500cc class. Your Angel Nitos who we didn't see race, the Martin Wimmers, the Rougeries and Chevaliers, those sort of people. They were the backbone of the Grand Prix racing, and it was great to go and see them.
That's not bad. We're half an hour in, Martin, and that's the first time we've mentioned Angel Nieto's name in the subject.
Oh, right. Well, we've not done too bad, have we?
Which is quite astounding, which means we're going to need another episode just to talk about Angel Nieto, who is still probably the greatest ever small bike rider.
Yes.
What is it? Ago 15 world titles, and Nieto 13. I mean,
90 Grand Prix wins.
Yeah, very much so.
And lots of evil tricks, gamesmanship, and utter.
Stopping to have a chat with people, he was very, very. Of course, tragically, lost his life in a road accident.
Yeah,
I mean,
one of those horrible ironies.
Yeah, very much so. And coming up to a much more modern time, so it does appear that all the riders you look at the MotoGP grid now have come up through Moto3 and Moto2, but it's not quite the championship it was, is it?
It is, because it's a teams championship. There aren't factories in there. It's not. Yeah. It's the basic structure has changed. And you're right. Yes, you're going to get paid a few quid to ride Moto3 and Moto2, but you're not going to make money until you want a Moto Grand Prix bike.
Yeah.
But what I think what I liked about the smaller classes, before the current trend of it just being a feeder class almost, is you had career guys. Say that word again. That career guys who were in there. Say the likes of Carlos Lovato in 250. Angel Nieto, Lazzarini, or Jorge Martinez in the 125.
They depended on there being factory bikes in the smaller classes, Martin. That's my point.
I agree. But I think the nice thing about it is when the young guys came in, now in Moto3, we've got young kids racing against young kids.
Yes.
And they've raced against each other before they get to Grand Prix. They know each other. They consider themselves immortal, I think, as we all did perhaps when we were 18, 19.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think that leads to it crossing the line of what it should be. I think back in the day, if you had that career guy in there who, if one of these young guys came in and was out of line, would just walk along down the pit lane and have a word in his shell, and say, "Look, just dial it back a little bit."
On that happy schoolmasterly note, I'm going to say there's 1 minute and 20 seconds left for you to decide how many more episodes we need on this subject.
I hope we don't appear to be old curmudgeons. I really mean this as well. We do appreciate that the sport's got to look ahead, and obviously what has happened in Formula One has been very successful in many, many ways, and that's the way MotoGP is probably pointing. But as I said, I think at the start, you can't erase or ignore history, can you? You really can't, and you can learn a lot from it. And please, we can't forget all the names we've mentioned, and there's plenty more. We mustn't forget them, must we?
No. And the people who've come in and they run the commercial side of the sport, but they don't own the history of the sport. The history of the sport is down to the FIM, and it's up to us guys to try and keep it alive as long as possible, eh?
Yeah, the old curmudgeons are not giving up on it.
Yeah.
Despite having to get up early, Jules, I enjoyed that, didn't you? And I think we've had our say, haven't we?
Dr. Raines had a few things to say there, I feel.
Yeah, I thought he did very much so. And it'd be interesting. Please come, get on and give your opinions, what you think about these old world champions and the old class. That's important to us. And I think it absolutely carries on the theme next week, doesn't it? When Steve Webster, 10 times World Sidecar Championship with 62 Grand Prix wins, so an absolute legend in sidecar racing. And of course, sidecars are very much part of that early World Championship because they were a great mode of transport then, weren't they? And
well, yes, this is why people say sidecar racing. Why? Because the working man got his family around when he got married and had kids, he bolted a sidecar to his BSA.
Yeah, he did. Absolutely. And that's going to be a really interesting conversation.
I think so.
Yeah. And you've got the Stafford Bike Show.
The classic bike show in a couple of weeks,
That's always interesting, isn't it? You meet a lot of old friends there.
Oh, there's always, you think, I should know him. Who's that? What jacket is he wearing?
I'm glad that happens to you.
And the other year, Alex George came up for a word, and it took me 2 minutes. It's Alex, just...
Yeah, you don't want to say anything. You think, let him talk a bit more, then it won't click.
Oh, of course it is,
Yeah. So, the Stafford Bike Show, Classic Bike Show, couple of weeks' time. Steve Webster next week. Stuart Higgs is coming on just before the start of the British Superbike Championship. That's going to be really interesting because when I was starting off as a journalist, the Superbikes was almost a mini world championship because all the stars came and rode in it because it's the only way they made some serious money by coming to ride in Britain. Yeah.
We're back to the subject where you making a living without getting a real job, which is
which we've done for all our lives.
All our working lives, Nick.
Our working lives. We are lucky.
Carlo Purdat saying to me years ago, "We are the golden gypsies."
That's a great description of God.
I think he's describing himself rather than...
I think he's... And still around, isn't he?
Still stirring it.
Yeah. Cigarette in mouth. Right, motorsporttickets.com. You know where to get your tickets from, don't you? Formula One, MotoGP, World Superbikes, TT races in the Isle of Man. The QR code will be on the screen any moment now, or via the link or show notes. But buy your tickets through them. That helps them and it helps us, to be honest with you. And Jules, as always, please get people to post us, write in, do whatever you want to do, especially about this subject of forgetting multi-world champions in the smaller classes.
Absolutely. And you can get this wonderful content earlier by subscribing, becoming part of the Paddock Club. But if you don't want to spend money on that sort of thing, then just subscribe on Spotify or YouTube or whatever at no cost and get notified when the new stuff is out. And having your name on that list does help us with the dreaded algorithms and getting up the top of them,
Yeah. It all started off as a bit of fun. It still is a bit of fun. I think we're nearly on the 50th
scary,
episode. It is scary.
This was an idea of let's have two old boys chatting in a pub.
Yeah.
Although, to be fair, we've just had three old boys chatting in a pub.
We have. Yeah. 9:30 in the morning is a bit early for a pint.
It is really. Yes, I need a cup of tea, Nick.
Right, I'll let you have your cup of tea. I got Speedway tonight. Oxford Cheetahs versus Poole Pirates.
Ooh.
Weather permitting, but summer's on its way, Jules.